Abercrombie-Winstanley, US diplomat and former deputy director for the Office of Iran Affairs and deputy coordinator for counter-terrorism. Good morning to you, Gina. Thanks so much for joining us. So just to kick us off, what can you tell us about the now confirmed death of the Ayatollah? How consequential is this?
Thank you. There are two ways of looking at it. If the most important way, of course, is will it change the trajectory of Iran's path? And it's unlikely to do so. When we talk about regime change in Iran, there are several layers deep. This is a mature government full of parliament, over 40 years of one leader. So he made plans for his successors. There are reports that he had every senior leader choose 4 more layers in case they were taken out by the United States or Israel. So it is unlikely to change it. We also know that the Revolutionary Guards are really what keeps that regime going, and they have gone nowhere. So that's one side. On the other, he's the longest serving, if you want to use that word, dictator in the world, 40 years in place. And it is a seismic change for Iranians. They're going to have a new leader.
No, absolutely. And is it also potentially still quite symbolic for Iran's near abroad and various countries in the West as well, who have had to suffer the consequences of the Ayatollah's sponsorship of terrorism, of the kind of promotion of this kind of model of sort of Islamist revolutionary politics? I mean, surely the fact that one of the two Ayatollahs to rule over Iran has been, the very person who was saying death to America and death to Israel 5 minutes ago has been brought to an end by those two countries. Surely it's a kind of a knockback for that kind of politics and that kind of terrorism. Surely.
Indeed, you're absolutely right about that, and it's one of the challenges for those who believe firmly in the rule of law or international law. This is troubling. There are many valid arguments about the legality of this, and certainly whether it's within the norms to go and assassinate leaders. On the other hand, there are very few people that I can even think of who will mourn his passing. He had a horrific reign for Iranians, for the region in particular. Certainly the Gulf countries will not miss him. And for the diaspora that is all over the world, including in the United States. So it's a challenge. Certainly no one is going to lament his passing, but people are reasonably so, concerned about how it was done and the United States, attacking another sovereign nation. Yeah.
On the point of how it was done, do we know any more about the strike, the attack itself? We know that it was on his compound, also seems to have been kind of the nerve center of the regime. What do we know as of right now about how this attack took place?
Well, what we know is that there was intelligence that identified that he would be there in that vulnerable place. And that is why the strike was done during daylight, which is very unusual to start a war. They usually get started at night. So we know that certainly the Israelis, if not the United States itself, has assets on the ground. And of course, we saw the effectiveness of Israeli intelligence during the war in June, where they, and then with our assistance, were able to knock out senior leaders, across the government of Iran.
So we've been talking a lot over the course of the show, and also a little bit in our conversation here, about the questions people have about the methods of this military action, of whether or not it's going to work, of the legality and so on. But on some level, didn't the Ayatollah kind of sign his death warrant when October the 7th happened, when his various proxies started firing on Israel? Wasn't there a kind of sense that his own hubris in wanting to export terrorism, wanting to try and bring down Israel and so on and so forth, that he was going to put more of a target on his back, that something was going to happen, even if it wasn't assault and strikes as audacious as this, that something was set in train there that was always going to lead to something happening to him, I suppose?
That's an interesting thought. But what I would say is that may well be true with regard to the Israeli government. It is not true with regard to the United States government. And this is a challenge in front of the president. He has yet to explain why now. What was the threat that was so imminent that it was going to put Americans in danger? And of course, going to war, it should be about America and American safety. The Iranians had not had any credible threats against our homeland, regardless of what the president said about missiles being able to reach the United States. No one with knowledge and expertise says that's true. So, hyperbole, which we have heard from President Trump before. The negotiations were ongoing. We heard from the Omani foreign minister that they were very productive, that President Trump was absolutely going to be able to get a better deal than President Obama got before him. And this is what he said he needed, he wanted. We all understood that. And so even though that deal was close to hand, he decided to bomb anyway. And this was very much a repeat of June, where we were in the midst of negotiations and bombed. As a diplomat, as a former diplomat, this is obviously something I wouldn't be supportive of. And I think many in the United States, the polling has shown that the majority of Americans were not interested in war with Iran. So the president has yet to make the case to the American people. Perhaps he will tomorrow. We haven't heard from him yet, except through his Truth Social, which are not the channels when you are engaging in something so very serious as war. You're taking lives, invading a country, and possibly making errors, as we've seen with the missile that allegedly, we'll find out whether it was the United States who did it on the school. Doing it via tweet is
leaves a lot to be
less
desired.
than, yes.
Absolutely. And on the question of what happens next, because we've now had it confirmed by Iranian media that he is dead. It was interesting, the kind of gap of time that it took for them to do so. But what, as you see it, is the next stage? Obviously, there'll be some kind of interim. I understand from our previous guest that the president will take power for a period of time. But what do you see as happening next for Iran and the regime? Do you think it's we're going to see more and more figures taken out, more and more of its ability to project power degraded, or how do you see it playing out?
Well, that is really an even more interesting question in the last 2 hours than it was earlier. The president said regime change. Certainly, U.S. intelligence and likely Israeli intelligence would have confirmed for him that simply taking out the supreme leader is not sufficient. As I said earlier, there are layers. They were prepared for him to be taken out. So, doing a real regime change, and we heard the president announce that to the Iranian people, we'll take out the leaders, the rest is up to you. Well, we haven't seen Iranians going to the streets trying to take over their government, and it seems like that is not immediately on the books to happen. So
that part certainly remains to be seen. Unfortunately, Gina, I'm going to have to leave it there. But Ambassador there, Gina Abercrombie-Winstanley, the US diplomat and former Deputy Director for the Office of Iran Affairs.
Thank you so much, Gina. That was absolutely wonderful.
Sure, thank you. I hope I can get a link to it. He had great questions.
we will definitely sort that out eventually.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll definitely